Great. Thank you so much, Danielle. Hi, everyone. As Danielle said, my name is Amreeta. I'm a therapist here at Shift Collab. Um, I primarily work with individuals who are looking for support in building their self-worth or trying to work through perfectionism, anxiety, or depression, among other things. Um, but if you know of Brene Brown, she's a researcher in the States, and she works on shame and vulnerability and about helping us live authentically and connect deeper with people. And I love using her material and work with the clients that I work with. And I'm going to be using her concepts, her ideas, and her activities in our talk tonight. As you know, this talk is about mastering the art of tuning into your intuition, basically. So what we're talking about tonight is helping you to learn to connect and be able to listen to your intuition or your gut a bit more. I'm going to talk a little bit here and there. There'll be some mini activities that I'm going to start you off with. And along the way, I may ask people to share. If you're willing to share, that'd be great, whether by audio or chat box, that'd be great. Have a pen and paper by your side. So when we're doing the activity, you'll be able to reflect along the way. Okay. If I'm going ever too fast or too slow, please let me know. In this half an hour, I want to be able to share as much as I can with you. But half an hour feels like it's really fast too. So if I'm going too fast, just give us the heads up. But if you do have any questions, I just ask that you save it for the end, just because if we're in the middle of the activity or I'm talking about something, I may miss the question, I may not feel like the right time. So if you can save it for the end, that would be appreciated. Okay, so I hope you all are ready to begin. And what I'm going to begin is by asking you to do an activity right off the bat, okay? And what I want you to do is basically set an intention for yourself with this talk tonight. And we're going to use an activity that Brene Brown likes to use because I'm a Brene Brown groupie. We're going to do that. And it's called the permission slip. Okay, so just like when we were kids and we were, given a permission slip to be able to go to a school trip, I'm asking you to write a permission slip for yourself, in a way, letting yourself know what you may need for yourself during our talk tonight, or what you may need from the rest of us, if there's anything, right? Or the permission slip may be about something new you may try during our talk tonight. So to give you an example of what a permission slip looks like, I'm going to pull up what I wrote. I don't know if you can see that so clearly. I hope the font is right. But I wrote myself a permission slip, and it basically says, I give myself permission to be patient with myself today. So that's an example of a permission slip, and that's one I gave myself because, like I said, half an hour I can find myself rushing through. So I want to be sure to be patient and take my time to share the information. So giving you a moment to write that permission slip down. I would love if you could share your permission slip with the rest of us, especially if there's something you need from the rest of us during this talk tonight. If anyone would like to share in the chat box. Yeah. And if not, that's totally okay too, but make sure you keep that permission slip in your mind. Okay. Jessica said, I give myself permission to slow down. Great. Yeah. And don't know where you were, but if you were transitioning from work to doing this, it's good to slow down. My permission slip to show up fully and be present. Hi, Megan. And I give myself permission to feel enough when it feels like there are no progress. That is really great. Yes. Because sometimes those are the times where we do tune out from our intuition when we feel like we got to be doing more. Give permission to be here while so many responsibilities are calling. Yeah, being present here, to listen and not think too far ahead. Perfect. So it sounds like for a lot of us, the permission slip is really about being present in the moment, and not being distracted by things around us. And like for myself, being patient and being in this space. So great. So keep that intention in mind as we keep going. Ooh, one more. I give myself permission to not show up perfectly every time. Showing up is enough. Awesome. Yes, I love that. So yeah, like showing up, that's all we can ask for. And actually that's kind of like that's in a way when we can show up is just proving to ourselves that like that we're good, and that actually is what helps build confidence within us, right? When we've just can show to ourselves that we can show up no matter what, kind of thing. So, okay, so with that permission slip in mind, let's talk really briefly about intuition first. When I use the word intuition, or when we talk about your gut, what are some words that maybe pop in your mind when you think about that? Here, clip. So trust. Ooh, stomach. Yep. Yep. Instinct. Believing in myself. Anxiety. Oh, interesting. That sounds like intuition feels like anxiety sometimes. Is that right? Right. Yeah. Fear. Yeah. Someone said I agree with anxiety as well. Isn't it interesting, right? That when our intuition is speaking, it can feel or it is anxiety. And we try so hard to avoid anxiety when actually that can be a really powerful tool within our belly, where a lot of us feel the intuition. Inner voice, sometimes anxiety too. And what about in terms of like, is there a sense like, people mention stomach? Is there a physical sensation when you kind of have the sense that your gut is talking to you? Does it feel like butterfly in the stomach, or does it just feel like the sense of just firm knowing, maybe? Nausea. Yeah, yeah. Oh, sometimes it feels like resistance and somersaults, depending on what the issues are. Yes, butterflies and pit of stomach. Right. Yeah. Feels like being put on the spot. Right. And Mason, like uh, that's such an astute comment, because I think often we have the sense of we feel like we're put on the spot and we got to know what to do right away, right? um but actually when we think about intuition, Brene Brown talks about there's no one single way of knowing, right? So there's this one part where we feel like we're supposed to know. It's like it's supposed to be like this inner sense, and we're just supposed to feel like we just know. And it could be a quiet voice that whispers that, like, yes or no. But often when we're put in uncertain situations and we don't know, our intuition is really telling us to get more information, right? It's sort of telling us we don't know what we're supposed to do here, and we got to look into it or do something about it, right? So often when we have that feeling of like, we're put on the spot and we got to know what to do, is that intuition talking? Is that anxiety? Is it shame? Is it that sense of we're supposed to be good enough, or we're supposed to be productive? And often it's a combination of all of them, right? So it's like, how do we still stay connected with our intuition, even though there's these kind of like what seems like maybe competing or similar emotions there, right? And so, when there's so many different definitions and ideas of what intuitions are that scientists and psychologists have talked about. But if I go with Brene Brown's definition, she talks of intuition like in two parts. One part is the ability to hold uncertainty, and the second part is the willingness to trust that the way we've developed our instinct and knowledge is basically like fair and valid, right? So if you think about that, it's not like the sense of like, oh, we're supposed to know what to do right away. It's really holding these two spaces of being able to tolerate the uncertainty and then being able to trust that the insights that we've gained over the years, the experiences, the reasoning, all of that is valid and fair, right? Does that make sense if I say it like that? Like, yeah. All right. And people have different ideas and different opinions on that, right? So, okay, all that being said, if that's what intuition is, it's about recognizing when our gut either goes offline or when we stop believing in what our gut is trying to tell us or trusting it, right? And often, as sort of Brene Brown's definition, it's when we need certainty. It's when we're looking, when there's like kind of like we're in the midst of making a big decision and we don't know what to do. That uncertainty can be hard to tolerate. That what we do is we look for certainty. And when we look for certainty, we kind of turn off or turn away from our intuition, right? Um, so, like, as an example, I guess, am I thinking of an example or that just went poof in my mind? That's okay. But so basically, when we look to control, we are trying to find a way to avoid uncertainty is one part, right? But when we move away from avoiding the uncertainty and we move away from our intuition, there's kind of like a disconnect that happens within us because our values, our knowledge doesn't quite click or align with the actions that we take. And that can sometimes lead us to feel like we're not good enough and we blame ourselves and we shame ourselves for that. Or we feel more anxious because we feel more vulnerable. And and as that time goes on, we trust our intuition less, or we think our intuition is less reliable, and we start feeling more anxious and less confident with ourselves. Okay, so I hope that kind of makes sense. But if we move on, then it's sort of recognizing when you've gone offline, when you've stopped trusting your intuition and your gut. And there's three ways of looking at that, right? There's three types of behavior that we can do. But actually, I went a bit ahead because I want us to do one quick activity before I talk about that. Okay, so in this activity, I want you to choose an arena. Choose an area of your life that, whether it's happening right now or it's happened in the past, where you've seen and experienced your intuition either going offline or that you stop tuning in or trusting your intuition, right? So I want you to write that down on your pen and paper so you have that handy as we keep talking. And if it's hard to think about when you've sort of not listened to your intuition, when it's feel like you've always not been, then think of a recent time or an experience where you've been dealing with some uncertainty or you've had to make some decisions or navigating something new and scary. And I just want you to write that arena down. And when you feel ready, I would love if you could share what some of those arenas are for you. An example of an arena is, let's say, I'm thinking of like a big decision you have to make. So let's say you have applied for a job and it's a job of like in a new role or something really big or major, and you kind of like don't know if you should take this job or not. Or if you're in a relationship and you kind of feel like there's something that's not right in that relationship, and kind of like, maybe your intuition or your gut is telling you something, but you're not quite able to hear it or not trusting what it's saying. Okay. So I don't know if anyone's typing, but we'll move on because of time. But keep that arena in mind as we do the main activity, okay? I just want to quickly go through then just recognizing the behaviors that you may do when you've stopped trusting your intuition, right? So I'll go through it really fast, but if people have any questions about that, we can definitely talk about it more near the end. The first one is when we survey or poll other people for their opinion, right? So if you have a major decision to make and you ask your trusted friend or or even people you don't trust or you don't know, you ask them for their opinion, what they think you should do. And sometimes we do that to handle the unknown, but it's also a way to diffuse the blame so that if something goes wrong, it's not only us that did it, right? Oh, and I see some people sharing about arena stuff. Thank you. Um, the second one is that we completely ignore our gut when it's yelling at us loud and clear to stop, to slow down, to do more research, to reality check our expectations. And again, we do that because we may not be ready to face the answers that our intuition is asking us to look into, right? So that can feel scary. And the last one that we may do is we rush into decisions, right? And we can't tolerate that. We do that because we just want to get it done and over with, and we don't want to stay in that place of discomfort. But when we rush into a decision, we're not really fully exploring whether it aligned with our values or whether it's sort of part of maintaining our boundaries, which we'll talk about soon. Right. So I hope that makes sense. I would have asked you what you think you do, but I want you to keep, we do any of those three at any point in our life, right? In any big decisions or intuition. But just think of the arena that you've picked. Which part of that behavior do you tend to do in that area? All right. So let's jump into then one practice. So, trusting your intuition, just like trusting another person, it doesn't take some big grand gesture for you to completely trust that person, right? It's a daily practice, it's a daily activity that we have to do to help us build that trust within ourselves, right? And if we talk about one practical way to do that, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to talk about it from Brené Brown perspective of trust, right? And she talks about the seven elements of trust, or what she calls braving. And braving is an acronym that stands for boundaries, where you are clear of what your boundaries are and you respect your boundaries, and that you're willing to say no, or when somebody or something is crossing your boundaries, you're willing to speak up about it, right? R is for reliability, that when you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it, and that you're aware of your limitations, and that when you say you're going to do something, you're going to deliver based on within what you are aware of your competency and limitation. Accountability, you own your mistakes, you apologize and make amends. Vault is that when information is shared to you that's not yours, you keep it in confidence. And if we talk about in case of other people, you're not sharing it with other people, right? I for integrity is that when you're making a decision or you're making a choice, you're choosing based on your values and not choosing something that's because it's fun or easy or fast or just comfortable, right? Sometimes we have to make decisions that are outside our comfort zone. But if it aligns with our values, it's maintaining our integrity. And for non-judgment, so being able to ask for what you need without feeling judgment, without judging yourself for it. And generosity, like extending the most generous assumption you can have of your own intentions and words, and even the assumptions that you have of other people, right? In what they say to you. I've gone through that really fast, but so far, does that make sense? Okay, so in the remaining time we have left, I'm going to keep this braving post up. And what I like you to do is thinking of the arena you've picked, right? I want you to go through each of this element and ask yourself if you maintained it. And the purpose of why we're doing that is to help you to understand which aspects of trusting yourself and trusting your intuition is strong and which part of it you tend to feel like you kind of veer off course, right? So as an example, like, did I maintain my boundaries, right? So if I was making this decision about um, starting this new job, was I clear on my boundaries in terms of when I am able to do that job, like what my hours are, and maintain the boundaries? That's not a great example, but I hope it makes sense in some ways. So I want you to take a few moments, take your time to do this activity, to do this part, and answer for this, each of them. Did I maintain my boundaries? Was I reliable? Did I maintain accountability? Hold my volt? Did I maintain my integrity? Did I practice non-judgment? Did I maintain generosity? And if I go like this, can you guys still see the screen? Yeah? Okay.
Yep.
It didn't do anything on my end, so never mind then. So a couple more minutes. And in the meantime, feel free. I would love to hear if during this exercise, was there any part of braving that stuck out to you when it comes to listening to your intuition? And by the way, this is very easy to Google and find. If you Google Braving Brene Brown, you're going to find lots of articles and images and all sorts of stuff. So someone wrote boundaries and reliability. I'm assuming that's an area where you've realized that that's where it's hard to maintain when it comes to listening to your intuition and trusting yourself. I have such a hard time articulating what I need sometimes, and often feel guilty for asking. Yes, and like, when that happens, try to recognize which of those elements does that sort of is it like to do with the boundaries, or is it this reliability? Like, what part of it? And you might find it sort of trickles throughout, right? It's like even your integrity, right? But feeling guilty, it's sort of like, what does that take away from you when you feel guilty? Which of these elements are taken away for you? I find generosity hard when dealing with past experiences that have hurt me. All the others I'm slowly mastering. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tusa. And generosity can be such a hard thing, especially when we've dealt with trauma, or when we've dealt with painful separations or breakup. It's hard not to think of the worst in others, and to think of the worst in ourselves. So that is like definitely a practice, an ongoing practice. I might have missed some. Integrity was an interesting one for me, not about doing the general right thing, but the right thing for my values. Generosity. Yeah. So integrity, holding space. Yeah. So like, isn't it interesting how they all connect and how we all share the same kind of struggle, right? When it comes to tuning into our intuition and into trusting ourselves more, right? One more, integrity stuck out for me. Continuous learning is a huge value, but sometimes I feel like I'm having difficulty learning something. And yeah, so, when it feels so overwhelming, you procrastinate. Just keep in mind that when we procrastinate is to avoid unpleasant emotions, right? And, hence that's why we feel overwhelmed, right? So it all, that might be a place to explore more, like whether it's processing, reflecting more with yourself, or whether through therapy or some sort, is to understand kind of like how to break that down and how to support yourself when you feel overwhelmed so that you can come back to you. right? So I know we're short on time, and I know I just feel like we just rushed into this reflection, but I'm wondering if there are any questions that anyone have about anything that I've talked about today, or wants to share anything else. If we were in a small circle, I would, with all the sharing, I would ask everyone to reflect on each other, right? With each other's sharing. But obviously, with the time and the number of people, we don't. Yeah, you're welcome. And someone said, I haven't seen this exercise before and will be helpful to look back. And yes, like this is why I wanted to share this today, because I think with what Brene Brown shares with Braving, it's sort of like a practical tool, and it's questions you can ask yourself. And it's not meant to judge you or to put yourself down, but it's to just honestly ask yourself, did I maintain my boundaries here? Was I reliable, etc.? So I hope it was that practical tool today. Great. So if there's no other questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us at any time. But, I hope you found this talk helpful, and give you some insight for you to think about when you think about tuning in and listening and trusting your intuition more. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.